Hello, I'm Willa. My pronouns are she, her, and they, them, and I'm here today to talk to you about the position of costume designer. So to preface, it's a very fluid position that depends a lot on the size of your creative team, your budget, and the overall magnitude of the project. So I'm going to go through what the position is. It's basically designing anything worn on the body and then making that design happen. So the design comes from understanding the script, knowing the culture that surrounds it, and being able to dress the characters in such a way that relays that information and fits in with the rest of what's on the stage. So making the design actually happen can go a few different routes, but basically boils down to finding a source for the costume pieces you need and then making sure the costumes are doing what they're supposed to. You will also need to be able to describe your design to other members of your creative team, be able to write up notes about what you're putting on stage, and also make sure that the costumes themselves are comfortable and safe for your actors. What is a typical day? That can basically be broken up into two different roles. One is reviewing the notes of your production. So your design will not be perfect from the start. And through the rehearsal process, you will have to modify the direction you're going in to make sure that it actually creates the visual narrative that you want. And also sourcing costume pieces. The clothes have to come from somewhere, and you might have to go shopping, seek out rentals, or make them yourself. And this feeds into how do responsibilities change in relationship to productions. So as I said earlier, it's a very fluid position, and I think one of the most important things you can really think about before you accept a costume designer position is how many jobs are being telescoped into the costume design position. Because sometimes it also includes things like sewing lots of clothes, finding places to rent from, but also doing laundry and trying to design hair or special effects makeup. Sometimes you have to do things like designing puppetry or sourcing jewelry. Sometimes there's a team helping you. So every project and every garment that you want to put on stage for period piece. But sometimes it's a very small show and everyone is comfortably dressed from a secondhand store. So responsibilities, at the base, while they're all keeping people safe, making sure it actually sends out the kind of information you want, the day-to-day responsibilities of a costume designer are changing all the time, and that's okay. This also leads us into what you have to do before, during, and after a show. And that one's sort of easier. At the start of a show, when you're first brought onto a creative team or when you're sought out, you have to be able to express what your design looks like. Sometimes I know some designers who use like mood boards, collages, drawings, painting, photographs, but at the start of a show, when you're generating what you want the actual outcome to look like, you have to be able to describe that to other people and make sure that your ideas are not conflicting with theirs and that everyone's on the same page. So I know that in my own past, I have to be very particular about the color palettes that I'm using to make sure that my costumes aren't clashing with the set. During, you're actually sourcing the costumes and updating your design, as I went back to earlier. And during is the part where there's the most variation in what your responsibilities look like. But basically, throughout the course of the rehearsal process, you're making sure that the costumes are coming along in a timely manner for dress rehearsals. And then after the show has already finished its course, you have to make sure that the costumes are cleaned and either stored away in the theater or returned to wherever they've been rented from or returned to whatever actor you borrowed them from. So now we've come to the section about position-specific terminology. And I wanted to say that most terms in costume design that are related to like garments and styles and stuff are shared with fashion. And those are pretty easy to look up, and I guarantee you probably already have a pretty good working knowledge of that. But there are two very particular costume design terms that I want to bring up, and they're both related to paperwork. So the first one is the costume plot, which is a pretty simple document that tracks all costume changes in a show. And that's important because it gives you and the other people on your design team an idea of how many outfits you're going to have to create and whether or not parts of your outfits are going to have to be on stage. Like if somebody puts a cardigan on halfway through a scene, then that's something that you're going to want to make sure you don't forget, and you're going to want to make sure that like the director and the stage manager also know that they're going to have to keep track of that garment when it's on the stage. And the other thing is the costume Bible, which is a large book or binder that you make, which includes the plot, but also measurements, detailed lists of what is in each outfit and whether or not you have to be doing work on them, and also whatever reference pictures you've collected along the way, so that way if you've stepped away from the project for a little bit, you remember like what are all of the things you have to do for each person, and also exactly what sort of vision you had for each character. So now we get to advice, which is my favorite section. And I realize I've been speaking in really general terms about costume design and other parts of costuming in theater. And I want to say that I'm being very particular about that because costume design is such a huge field. It is a place where you really can make the job whatever you want it to be. Whatever your design focus and whatever your skill set is, you can definitely find a production or a place where those things will shine. So if there is some particular craft or some particular style that you are fascinated by, pursue that. Because I guarantee when you come back to costume design or when you integrate it into costume design, it will bring something that is so interesting and unique that it'll make